going on, everybody? Hope you guys are doing well. Today we're looking at the advanced time guide for the New York session. This will be part one of probably a two-part video, unless I can fit it all into this video. We're going to look at bias and intraday market profiling, New York session key timings, and then the applications and important conclusions you can get as a result of this video. I do want to say from the start, this is a very advanced video, so you're probably going to have to watch it over and over for it to make complete sense. We'll have the lecture part of it where I'm trying to teach, and then at the end we'll look at some examples as to all these concepts blend together with price. Okay. If you're watching this video, it's implied that you already have a good understanding of ICT concepts and price action in general. You've already watched the 2022, you've already watched plenty of his content, and you preferably already have a solid model in place. This video is here to refine and hopefully fill in some gaps in your understanding about time, and hopefully refine your model down even further from what it was. You'll probably have questions, but I promise as you study it and as you practice it, it'll all kind of blend together and make perfect, clear sense. All right, so first we'll look at bias and intraday market profiling. So this video won't cover bias in itself. I'm gonna assume that you already kind of have a method to find bias. And if you've seen the in-depth guide for market maker models, which I'll put up on the screen here, that's the thumbnail of it, or the New York IRL to ERL video that I'll put up on the screen as well. These two videos are going to be extremely important in finding a bias for the New York session. If you haven't watched them, I suggest you go and watch them before you watch this. But if you've already found a bias, right, you already know what your draw on liquidity is, or it's either going to move higher or lower to fill an inefficiency or sweep liquidity, then you can basically assume it's going to be one of two things, right? We are either, for the New York session or for the day, we're either going to have a open, high, low close on the daily candle, or we are going to have a open, low, high close on the daily candle, right? So this idea of the open to close is fractal in nature. So we want to see this for both the daily and on the New York session. So the timings here is what's important. We know the opening times, we know the closing times. So what you can find is there's key times on these highs and lows. And what you'll be able to deduce from this video is, if you understand for bearish, for example, we have an open high, low close. If you can have a great deal of certainty as to what time this high is supposed to be put in and what time this low is supposed to be put in, so we'll say it's Y and X. Between these two times, as long as the draw on liquidity is not met, so draw on liquidity is a price point, right? Draw on liquidity is a very specific point in price. We'll say sell side for this example. There's also a draw on time. So there's a draw on price of where it's likely to go to. There's a draw on time of when it's supposed to reach that buy. So if it's not the right price point, and if it's not the right time point, we can assume that between point X and point Y on this open, high, low close, we're going to continue to move. And that means between these two times, theoretically, if you were able to get in a position, you could ride it instead from, you could be targeting the sell side, but also targeting the time of day. So in this case, you're almost removing the need for price. I'm not saying you still obviously need price, find PD arrays and things like that and watch how price is respected. But in theory, as long as it's not the right time, right? If say this is 8:30 up here and this is 10 o'clock, if you entered at 9 o'clock, if you entered at 9:30, if you entered at 9:50, all of that would still have a reasonable move until that low is formed. And when you understand this, price action becomes very, very easy. Or not very easy, but it's much easier to understand when you know what timings the day is supposed to form. So we'll get into exactly how you can look at this, but say you have a bias and we know, okay, say our bias is bullish. Well, then our daily candle in this case will be our standard open, low, high close, right? So our daily candle from midnight to 1600, that's what our candle should look like on NASDAQ. Well, we can assume that this low is going to be a specific time window during the day, and this high is going to be a specific time window during the day. And preferably, so for this video alone, we're looking at midnight until the end of New York session, the AM New York session. We're not looking at the PM session for this. typically there's going to be 2 times that this low is formed. It's either going to be London session or New York session, specifically New York open. So if we know, okay, if London or New York is supposed to form this low, and then we're supposed to see preferably New York open or London close form the high of that current day, we can now draw conclusions of what New York is likely to do based on what has happened. If London has done this, New York will do that, right? So what we're determining is, once you figured out bias, we're basically determining where on this candle are we at New York open. So depending on what time you may look at the charts, I always look at it at 9:30. Right at 9:30 for this example, where are we in this open high low close? Sometimes 9:30 will be here, right? We're going to open up at 9:30 and we're right here. So what are we expected? What is New York's session expected to do? Expand. If we open up here at 9:30, well, we're likely to manipulate and then reverse. And you can expect SMT, something like here. So there's 2 very specific profiles on the day that are high quality, just 2. Okay, it's not very difficult, but there's only 2 high quality setups or market profiles that will function on the day. And that will be our classic London low of day, New York expansion into London close. And then our New York reversal, where basically London doesn't do anything meaningful. New York reverses into London close. And you can see these are both bullish profiles, but these are the only 2 high quality models, or I guess profiles, you want to be trading. The last one is what's called a swing to Z, where basically we're just consolidating within the range, or we have a retracement. It's not one that you want to be in. I'm going to pull up a chart here, and very, very big shout out to Market Maker Turbo. He's the one who posted a video about this and opened my eyes to these kind of profiling, and it's very simple. I'm going to add stuff onto it that he didn't mention specifically in that video, which should hopefully elaborate further on how you can use things like 8:30, 9:30, and 10 o'clock into these things. So let me pull up the picture here. Okay, so here we have the profiles. Okay, you can screenshot this, you can pause it, you can take your own notes on this, we'll do what you need to do. But these are the 3 kind of profiles, right? We have 6 in total, but technically 3. 1 for bullish, 1 for bearish. So the 2 high probability ones are the classic London protraction profile and the New York open reversal into London close. This swing to Z day, we're not going to worry about for this specific video. Just focus on these 4. Okay, and for the bullish examples, I've added price points into this and timings, but the timings are going to be the most important. So if we're looking at a classic London protraction profile, so this bottom left one specifically, our low of the day, right, because this is a daily candle, our low of the day should be formed between the times of 2 o'clock and 5 o'clock. Preferably it's digging into this price point, but look at just the timings. Low of day formed between 2 to 5. We have some sort of retracement entry at 7 to 10. And then we cap off the range between 10 to 12. So what you're doing here is you're, in essence, if we can identify the correct profile, we have a correct draw on liquidity, we know that it's likely to expand into 10 to 12. And we can target now this draw on time, as long as that time of day has not been hit, it's likely to continue to expand into whatever premium array. It's extremely powerful when you understand this level of thinking, because say it's 950, right? We're in a long from 930 and it just reached 950 and maybe it's spooled 100 points. Well, if we have a good understanding that it's likely to be the classic London protraction profile, we could hold on just till time of day. It can continue blasting another 100 points. And then when it hits 10 o'clock, that's when you would close. And I'll show you an example from last week of exactly where I use that kind of logic. We'll look at the New York open reversal here. So in this case, the New York open 7 to 10 is creating the low of the day. Obviously, we're going to have SMTs at these reversal points, but 7 to 10. And then we expand past our London high, which is our low-hanging fruit objective for that point. And then we make a new high of day between 10 and 12. Obviously, with these examples, we can be expanding into PM session. We're not looking at PM session, but just specifically between midnight and 12, so that 12-hour period, what's going on. And if you can identify one of these 2, it's much easier to trade because you actually have an understanding of time. We'll cover this later too, but it's also good to mention at this point, this is not some sort of pattern in price. Okay, you should not be patterning this. So you can't go to the 15-minute chart and just look for one of these things and understand what price is going. That's not how it works, right? This is why drawing liquidity and having a good understanding of price coming into this lecture is going to be very, very important. Because if you first find a draw on liquidity, where's it likely to go? And then you drop into the 15-minute chart and you look for, okay, what did London do? Did London manipulate? No. Okay, we're likely to reverse during New York Open. Did London manipulate? Yes. Okay, we're likely to expand during New York Open, right? So there's only two different scenarios that New York Open is likely to do. Either we're going to put in the low of the day if we're bullish, or we're going to expand and then create the high of the day during London close. So if we look at this bottom left one, this 2 to 5 in green is our London Open, our 7 to 10 is our New York Open, and then 10 to 12 is our London close. I know that these times are kind of funky. It's very, very, I think these are the correct timings for Forex, if I believe. But if you look and just study and you apply these times to this kind of profiling, it works. That does not mean that we're going to completely disregard our other timings and how we use those. I'm going to show you how those kind of play into this. But specifically for profiling, this is the timings we're going to use, right? So New York is between 7 to 10, London close between 10 to 12, London open between 2 and 5. So study these four, and I'll show you how it kind of plays into the rest of the things. So for this example, we have 2 to 5 down here. We have 7 to 10, creating our retracement entry, and you can see this would technically be our IRL to ERL. I'm going to leave most of the price points out for you to understand. Obviously, in that screenshot you probably took of the previous one, there's price points in there, so we know that this most likely is going to be form of an IRL. We'll have SMT at the reversal point, we'll have SMT during the New York session, and we're obviously reaching for some sort of premium array. In this case, we'll say buy side, external range liquidity. So in this profile, if we understand on the higher time frame we're likely to move forward, you have to have drawn liquidity first. That's the first thing. Okay, so DOL/bias. Then from the drawn liquidity and from the bias, we get it's either going to be an open low high close or an open high low close. In this case, we're bullish. We're going to look for an open low high close. Then we're going to look at what did London do? Did we create the low of this day? Was there some sort of, and by what did London do? I'm looking specifically at manipulation, meaningful manipulation, and a market structure shift or a SysD outside of that range. If we got that, then New York should expand. If we did not get that, then New York is likely to reverse. So yes, New York open expansion into London close between 10 to 12. No, then New York will reverse. Okay, and we can hold until time of day, which is what I'm trying to put emphasis on. So we get our draw, we figure out what's the profile. What did London do? Was there meaningful manipulation? Yes, no, boom. Okay. Now, specifically for the New York session, how does this apply? How can we use even further timings in to narrow down this kind of window? And that's going to be the more difficult part of understanding here. So just like how we have a fractal open low, high close for the day, the New York session is going to have that same exact window, right? Because if we look in here, we have an open, low, high close. Now, this New York session is also going to have timings that are important. If you've seen my previous videos, if you've seen my live stream recordings, we know most times, assuming there's no news, most times that these windows are going to form, 9:30 to 10 will create the low, and then typically we see 10:30 to 11 create the high. I know these timings it's confusing, but think about this. If the low of the session, the New York session specifically, is formed, that's within this range, right? And then the high is formed after 10. So look how these timings still line up. It's just we kind of take this and we shrink it down and we throw it right in there. So this timing will play in because it's higher time frame, it has more meaning. But then we also have this, which is specifically for the New York session, right? So this is, I'll cover this further in, but that's what you're going to be looking for. And there's also key times outside of that. The key times outside of that we want to be looking and studying for the New York Open is going to be 8:30, 9:30, 10 o'clock, and then really, I guess, also the 9:50 macro and how that plays into things. This will be an entry. But these timings over here are also extremely important. Okay. Each of these has a function, and especially when we have news drivers. So we already know that 9:30 has volatility injection. We know when there's 8:30 news, that's a volatility injection. We know that 10 o'clock is a volatility injection when there's news there too, right? So just like how we're expecting New York Open to either manipulate or expand, these specific profiles, or I guess these specific very key times, will have the same kind of function. We're either going to be manipulation or expansion. Okay, so these are key times within New York Open. Once we understand this, it's very, very clear most times. I know it's difficult, but it's very clear when we see this. So I'll show you an example. When I show you an example, it'll make more sense, but say we have a bullish bias, okay? London manipulated. So we saw London do something like this. We drop down into some sort of discount PD rate. We get SMT there. Okay, say we had SMT with ES. We had SMT with ES over here. So we had SMT. We got a clear market structure shift. And our draw on liquidity is yet to be hit, as well as our draw on time is yet to be hit. So we're likely to see New York Open is going to expand. If there is no news, right? Say there's no news on this day. What time is going to be the volatility injection? Well, I would assume it's going to be 9:30, right? That's the only kind of key time that within the New York session that we have a volatility injection. So in terms of the session, what time are we likely to put that manipulation in? I would say, since there's an increase in volatility at this key time, and we have no news, I'm likely, if 9:30 starts to drop, that's perfect, because now I'm likely to see 9:30 to 10 create that low of the session, and that means anything after that should expand into a new time of day and a new draw on liquidity. Right? So it's time and price. It's a crosshair. Say we had 8:30 news, and we saw 8:30 instead drops down for this specific profile. We saw 8:30 news come in, we spike down, okay? And we dig into some internal range for value gap, and we start to trade out of it. That's a key time that this low has been put in for the New York session. So these key times are low and high, low of session and high of session. Most times are going to be relative to one of these three. Our low of day and high of day could also be relative to one of these three. But if we're looking at this, if we see 8:30 manipulate and drop into a gap, are we likely to see 9:30 manipulate as well? No. We're going to see 9:30 expand, because now our low of session has been put in at 8:30 when that news driver came out. So we're going to see 9:30 expand. Until what time? What time will we see the new high format? London close. So after 10 a.m. So that means if we see 8:30 manipulate, we already have a good understanding of where the draw on liquidity is. We already saw London form the low of the day. I can, in theory, right before 9:30, get in. I can enter in long, market in long, off of a fair value gap, for example. And I'm going to hold it until after 10 o'clock when I know that new high of the current day is going to form, right? Where I can enter in at 9:30. It's going to expand. It's not going to stop at 9:35 and then reverse. It's not going to stop at 9:50 and then reverse. It's not going to stop at 9:59 and then reverse. Until it's hit 10 o'clock, every single false high that's formed, I want to see broken, right? So in here, if 8:30 drop down and then we open up and say 9:30 is right here now, we're going to see all of this expand. I don't care if this swing high is at 9:45. We're going to see it broken. At 9:59, we form a swing high. We're going to see it broken. Then this high is maybe formed at 10:03 and we reach the buy side. That's good enough for the New York. That's all the time and price is now, checked it off the box. Pause it, take your notes, go back and rewatch. I promise it makes sense. It's difficult, but I promise there's a logic to it. I'll show you some examples. But the key time, low of day and high of day. What I'm trying to get here is high of day, low of day, high of session, low of session, high of week, low of week. All of these are time-based. They're not random times that we're going to form these, right? If you think about it on your weekly profile, if we have a classic expansion week, what time is our low if we're bullish? What day of the week is our low going to form on a bullish week? Typically, it's going to be Tuesday. And then we're going to expand into Thursday. And Thursday is going to be our higher of a week, and then we may retrace into Friday, just like on the session. So these key times are going to be important to basically determining what time are we going to form the low of the session, what time are we going to form low of day, and what time are we going to expand into. I'll give you another example here. So say instead we have a bullish bias. What we see is we open up here at midnight. London kind of does something like this. And then right here, so this is maybe 2 to 5. And then right in here, we have 7 to 10. What do we expect New York to do? Well, if our bias is bullish, we expect New York to reverse. Right? We're going to expand into a new high of day. So that means London high becomes a short-term target. And we're also going to expand into a new time of day, which would be 10 to 12. Now say we have 8:30 news. If we see we have a bullish bias, London did nothing, 8:30 news comes in and smacks down, and we have a clear wick, and we have SMT, say with previous day with ES, right at 8:30. So right at 8:30, we formed the low of the day. Are we likely to see 9:30 then drop again and form a new low? Are we likely to see 10 a.m. continue to drop? No. I would say that we're gonna use anything after between 8:30 and 10 o'clock, post 10, we're gonna see it expand. That means in theory, if we have a correct draw and we've profiled it correctly, we could go long anytime between then, and we're gonna be right. Right? We could use the 9:30 entry. We could use that volatility driver. We could use the 9:50 macro as an entry. It's late, but it would work. We could use the 8:50 macro. We could use whatever bullish PD array in this range here, is that as long as it's holding, maybe it's in discount, you have a gap, you have an order block, whatever it is, you could get in, right? Because PD arrays are supposed to hold if the draw on liquidity is correct, just like how PD arrays are supposed to hold if the draw on time is correct. Say instead of 8:30 news, we had no news. What time of day do you expect this low to form if we haven't seen any reversal? I would say 9:30, and we're going to expand into 10 o'clock. And now you can see how this profile lines up with the New York session profile of 9:30 to 10, creating the low of the session, which is also the low of day. So this would be low of session and a low of day when we have a New York reversal. And then we're going to expand into 10 to 12, or sorry, 10:30 to 11 for the New York session. This would be current high of day. Now, the reason I say current is because in the PM session during lunch, we could continue to expand, but that would be the current high of day. So we've kind of narrowed it down. So it's 10 to 12 is the wider range. And then for the New York session, it's narrowed down even further between 10:30 and 11. But sometimes we can continue into lunch. Pause it again. Go back and watch it if you need to take notes. But I'm gonna flip over to some examples. Let me first look at my notes and see if I missed anything. This is how you trade turtle soup. Okay, you use time of day. If we know, say in here, right? If we have 10 a.m. news, for example, and 9:30 has done absolutely nothing to create the low of day, we're continuing to trend down, well then 10 a.m. will be the low of day. And that's what you could be, finding turtle soup. And turtle soup, all it is just, make this a new color. Turtle soup is key time plus key level plus SMT. That's what it is. Shout out to Exotic. But key time, key level, SMT. So key time could be, these times of day. It could be time of the session. But for example, at 9:30 turtle soup, the best opportunity for a 9:30 turtle soup would be the low of day, which is where we have no news, and it's a New York reversal profile, right? So 9:30, we would have a SMT, maybe with ES, and then key level is a PD array. And that key level most times is either going to be a 15-minute or 60-minute PD array. This is taken directly from ICT's core content. But each time we're looking for a draw on liquidity or a point where we're going to reverse for the New York session, it's going to be either a 15-minute or 60-minute PD array. And I'll put a link to a Twitter post that I posted about a week or 2 weeks ago about like the full New York session schematics, that's price related. This is a kind of the second part of that, which is time related. I hope this is coming across correctly. I'm gonna show some examples now, and then we'll probably just wrap the video there because it's a lot of information and I don't want to make it too long. But understand there's key times for high of day and low of day. You can also market profile after you've found the draw on liquidity of what the New York session is likely to do and what time it's likely to expand into. And then based on the news profile, you know when that low of day or high of day is likely to form at. And the news will either be manipulation or expansion. And we can now use entries such as price and time, like a macro or just any price point, or like a breaker or a unicorn setup or a fair value gap or an order block, into price, draw on liquidity, and a draw on time. And most times, if we're trading the New York session, it's going to be that London close between 10 to 12. Right, so this is London close. Okay. Please leave comments or DM me on Discord if this doesn't make sense, but if you've watched it a couple times, it will. Let's get into examples now. All right, if you made it this far, we're going to take a quick pause before we look at the examples. I wanted to add this in before we get into it, just looking at the old recording. But this is like the conclusion of all of what you just watched in a very condensed version. So I trust that if you've watched this far, you're already interested in it. But open low, high close, or open low, high close. Let me just copy it straight from the Discord. This is what we're looking at, okay? For the bullish example here, let's make it a little larger. Low of day, so like this. Our low of day will either be London open or New York open, right? So we know that to be 2 to 5 or 7 to 10. If London open is the low of the day, New York open should expand into 10 a.m., sometimes past it. Right, so we're expanding into London close. If New York open is the low of the day, preferably the exact time that the low of day should be formed is 8:30, 9:30, or 10 o'clock. This is based on the news driver. So this will be news driver. And we should expect a deeper expansion into London close, into 10 to 12. So just like here, if London open is low of the day, then 8:30, 9:30, or 10 should be low of session. That's also based on the news profile, of course. Okay. So there's the condensed down version. Screenshot this if you want to, but you can, that's basically the very, very short version that of everything you want to see. So if New York is we have a bullish bias and New York is expected to be the low of the day because London didn't do anything, preferably it's either going to be 8:30, 9:30, or 10. With SMT, looking at the news drivers is going to be important to determine which time of these three is going to be it. And we should expand deeper into London close, meaning not right at 10. We want to see it end. Preferably, we're going to continue expanding into maybe 10:30, maybe into lunch. It'll be further on, right? If London open is the low of the day, meaning we right at midnight, we dropped, created a low with SMT, we had a market structure shift out of it, going into New York open, we should see expansion either at 8:30, at 9:30, or 10 o'clock, form the low of the session, and then right into 10 a.m., sometimes past it. Very, very simple when you put it like this, right? All right, let's get into the examples. All right, so here we have the 4-hour chart of NASDAQ. Just quickly finding bias, obviously with hindsight, but we have an inefficiency here. Was traded into. We have no displacement on the downside. We have these relative equal highs up here. Bias of liquidity. We've also had any sense of disrespect of bullish PD arrays. We're holding bullish PD arrays. We're not disrespecting them at all. And we've kind of got this uptrend. I'm sure there's some SMT over here that we could be using. But just quickly, we'll say our bias is bullish. Okay. What profile are we looking for? We're looking at an open, low, high close. Right? And then we have to look at what London did. If London manipulated, we want to see New York expand. If London failed to manipulate, we want to see New York reverse. Right? So this is either going to be London open or New York open. That's it. 2 things. Very simple. So we drop into lower time frames. We'll go to the hourly chart. Can mark out things like previous day high. And we'll say the previous week high up here. And we'll get into the lower time frame even more, 15-minute. We look at basically here. Okay. So midnight opens, we see New York session. It kind of just, look, it just trends lower. And I'll mark out 2 to 5 here. This is our London open. Right? Did London do anything meaningful? Was there any meaningful manipulation during London's price action that indicates that New York is likely to reverse? I would argue no. Right? We don't have any SMT in here. If you pull up an ES chart, we do not have any meaningful manipulation where we have a manipulation during London, then a market structure shift, right? If we had taken out this high, I would argue, okay, London is maybe dropping down past opening price. And then if it dropped down there and then we expand up, then we'll see New York expand. So London didn't do anything here. So we're likely to see what? New York reverse. So between 7 o'clock and 10 o'clock, we want to see the market reverse. And our target, what's our low-hanging fruit on the reversal day? London high. And then obviously any external liquidity that could be used as a drawn liquidity after that. Okay, so now what can we assume? New York open from this profile. New York open is likely to reverse into, make this a bit smaller, into London close, meaning we're going to have expansion past 10 a.m. We want to see a key time low of day. And we're going to consult the economic calendar here. We want to see an entry sometime before 10 a.m. We want to be targeting a new high of day. So we're going to use things like London high and any external range liquidity as drawn liquidity. We also want to see preferably New York open or New York session timed high and lows. It's a lot of stuff, but okay, we want to see New York open reverse into London close. London closes between 10 o'clock and 12 o'clock. We want to see a key time low of day. And in this case, we have 10 a.m. news. So what is it? Is it likely to be 8:30? Is it likely to be 7 o'clock? We're going to form the low. It can be. I'm not saying it's impossible, but most likely the best case scenario, it's going to be 9:30 or 10. Right? Does that make sense? Because that's the manipulation. That's when the volatility drives in. And if 9:30 manipulated, just like how London, if 9:30 manipulated, 10 a.m. will expand. If 9:30 failed to manipulate, we'll see 10 a.m. manipulate and then expand after. Okay. We want to enter sometime before 10 a.m. We want to be targeting a new high of day past London high. And we're going to see New York session timed highs and lows. Okay, so if you go back and you look at that picture, let me pull it up actually again. Right over here, we're looking at this profile down here. Okay, this bottom middle one. We have some sort of discount IRL on the 15-minute or 60-minute or an ERL with SMT between 7 to 10. We expand into 10 to 12 past the London high. Okay. So now if we look at the lower time frames here, well, first let's actually look at this. What time is this formed at? 9:30. Random. Well, what time are we likely to expand into? These into London close, right? So after 10 a.m. So if we go back to, let's go back to the actual chart here. This is the one that I streamed on today. And I'll put the stream recording down in the description as well. But if you look at the lower time frame now, we have, put this on too. 9:30 drops. We form 9:35. We have short-term SMT there. We also had SMT with the previous day low, I believe. We expand up. We have this discount imbalance. It's traded into right at 9:50. And we're targeting a new time of day. So 9:30 manipulated. What is the news driver at 10 a.m. likely to do? Expand. So this at 9:52, I got in, and we're likely to see, so the London high is a new target. We also have external range liquidity after that is likely to be the target too. So I'm entering in there, 952, and we're expanding into this London high, which was the target. And I'll pull up the execution. I'll put that on the screen really quickly, just so I don't look like a fraud. Here's the execution from the Discord. Entering in there, and then trading up into the London high. Okay. So we're now targeting price, London high, and time. We have to see that new high formed after 10 a.m. And you can also see in here, our New York schematics are also playing out, where our low of the day is, or low of the session is formed between 9:30 and 10 o'clock. We also see our high of the session being put in between 10:30 and 11. Right, 9:35 there, and right at 11 o'clock, we formed that swing high. So that means what? Right here, 10 o'clock, we form a swing high. That's the right time. Do we take out the London high yet? No. Right here, 10:11, we failed to take it out. There, we run this. This high here, 10:26. Based on the New York session, is that the right time for our high of session to be put in? No. So we're likely to see that run out again. I know it looks cherry-picked. We'll go into some further examples. So here we have a New York reversal profile. Yesterday, so the swing to Z is the one you're going to want to avoid, and you can avoid it by looking at day of week. Do we have news drivers, things like that? So the typical times you see low probability price action, it's a swing to Z day. Let's look at Friday. Here we have SMT with the S. London creates the low of the day. Therefore, New York should expand. Into what time of day should it expand? 9:30? No. 9:50? No. After 10. We had 10 a.m. news driver on Friday as well. So in this case, the low of the session, we see it's 7 o'clock. It's not perfect. It's not right at 9:30. But in this case, we're going to expand. So if you look at the lower time frames, what would be a good entry? Well, anytime before 10 o'clock hits, and we see that swing high. This is a previous week high up here. Let me mark it out. Previous week high right over here. So another bias in liquidity pool. So that's price. How do we look at time now? So 9:30 is just going to expand. We're going to keep expanding until time of day. Keep expanding until 10 to 12. 10 o'clock to 12 o'clock is our London close time. So we're aiming for this London close kill zone. That means here at 8:30, we could be long. Here we could be long. Here we could be long. Here, until it hits 10 o'clock. And until we reach that bias liquidity, we're going to keep going. So when 9:30 came out and I saw this nice run up here, and we had this bullish order block that was supported, I understand, okay, it is likely to be a London reversal profile, so classic London manipulation into New York expansion. So New York is likely to expand into 10 o'clock, and we're going to reach for premium PD raise. So in this case, I don't need to see macro trade into this inefficiency. I don't need to see a specific sort of breaker entry. I can just use time in this case in pair with a price. So I'm using this bullish order block. I'm going to get in there, and I'm going to target after 10 a.m. So if I had just taken it from this entry from the order block up into this short-term buy side, 55 points. But what time does it sweep it at? 9:46. What time does the swing high formed at? 9:48. Is that the right time? No. So we're going to continue. Then here, we sweep the previous week high, and a new high is formed at 10:02. At that point, I'm turning off the charts. And I'll show you the execution from Friday, right in here. Long, as we continue to expand. And then I'm taking the majority of the position off after 10 o'clock. And you can see the orange folder news driver basically just is used as another additional expansion. We can look at the day before that, which was Thursday. It was a really, really clean reversal. So let's go over here. Okay, so we're assuming we already have a drawn liquidity. Okay, so our drawn liquidity, let's say, is bearish for Thursday. And you can go into the stream recordings for that as well. But our bias is bearish. We want to see an open, high, low close. What time is that high of day supposed to be formed at? London or New York? If London did this, New York Open will do this. In this case, we open up, we trade up. Does London do anything meaningful here? We trade into a bearish order block, and this inefficiency. Is there a market structure shift? Nope. Therefore, New York Open is likely to reverse. On Thursday, if you go back to the economic calendar, what do we have? 8:30 volatility news driver. So in this case, London fails to do anything meaningful. I'm not awake at 8:30, so I'm not seeing that. But 8:30 in this case manipulates up, and we have SMT. I think it was with YM in that case, if my memory is correct. So we're expecting this now to be the high of day. Right? 8:30 news driver came in and manipulated, created the high of day. We had SMT. Here we have key time, key level, SMT. 8:30 is now created the high of the day. What time of day are we likely now to expand into? What time do we want to see the low of the current day? Between 10 o'clock and 12 o'clock. That's London close. So New York Open here. And then we have London Open here. Let me pull up the picture really quickly so you can see this one in here. That's this, right? 2 to 5. We have London low as our low hanging fruit objective. We have our high between 7 and 10, specifically 8:30, because 8:30 was the volatility driver. We're going to see displacement into 10 to 12. So look for time of day for low and high of day, 8:30 with the SMT, etc. So now if we go into the actual lower time frames, it's really, really easy to find a trade, right? If we go back into here, we drop down to something like the 1 minute. Until it reaches 10 o'clock, we're going to keep going down. So we have inefficiencies. You can use the 2022 model in this. You could be using a breaker setup in this. We're just using price as an entry point, but we're targeting time. So here we have an inefficiency. I was not awake at that point. I saw this gap here. And as soon as we traded into it, we started to leave it at 9:20, I entered short. And what's the low hanging fruit objective for a reversal day? London low. Right? So I entered short there, covered down at London low, and it was a good, 11 minutes and 80 points. Let me pull up the execution there. So doesn't look like I'm lying. Here's the execution there. All right, it's not cherry picked. This just stuff repeats over and over and over. Short there, covered at London low. Same exact price action from over here. Notice as well, look at what time the swing low was formed at. 9:49. Is that the right time for the low of the current day to be formed at if it's a New York reversal profile? No. So what are we going to do with that low again? We're going to run it out. It's going to disappear. What time do we want to see that low ran out before? We want to see that low ran out before 12 o'clock because that's the end of the London session, the London close session specifically. So this becomes our short-term draw on liquidity. And look at what time we formed that new low. Here's 12 o'clock. We pierce it right there. Time of day, 11:50. Right? So this low is the wrong time. So we're going to run it out later. And let me pull up the predictions chat. I'll screenshot exactly what I said to the private group from Thursday. Post it up here. Like I said on stream, I'm still looking for a new low past 10 a.m. Latest time we can see it is 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If it is not ran out by then, no longer interested. Anything beyond is extra. And then eventually after that, you can see with my facetious stuff, we ran it out at 11:48, right there. So there's very specific levels and times at the low and high of the day and of the session that it has to happen. You can keep going back over and over and over again on these specific times. And if you can find one or two of these where London is the low of the day and we're expanding in New York, or New York is reversing, you just find one of them per week, you're fine, right? You don't need to do anything else. If you can avoid the swing to Z days, and I'll let you go back and study that, or we'll cover that in the second part. But if you can just find look over here. Mark at midnight. London manipulates. We have a market structure shift. What do you expect to be up here on between ES and YM? Some sort of SMT. We expand down. What time of day are we going to form the new low? Between 10 to 12. So anytime between London and 10 o'clock, we can be short, hypothetically, on demo. What's a good draw on liquidity? We have previous day low. I think that's perfectly fine. All right, that's clear. We have these relative equal lows down here. That's pretty juicy, right? It's relative equal lows, previous day low. All those are time-based. Actually, I don't know if that's previous day low. What is this? Wednesday. Yeah, it is previous day low. Also, these relative equal lows. Then if you turn these on, right? 8:15 spikes up. I don't think we had any news there. You can see 9:30 opens. We spike up. So 9:30 between the New York session, between 9:30 and 11 o'clock, we form that high. We run this out at 10 o'clock. That would be good enough. That'd be all you really need to enter. I can skip it over here. That's perfect, right? That's the new low of the day. We ran out liquidity. That would be fine. If you dropped into a lower time frame, I'm sure there's some other stuff. But in here, 9:30 manipulates. We chop around. Very difficult entries during the macro or whatever entry it could be in here. And then eventually we displace after 10 o'clock. Okay, it needs to spool now. Drops down. 10:07, we sweep liquidity on the 15-minute or 60-minute, and it's a new time of day to form the low. All of this becomes extra. We don't need all of that. Yeah, obviously you can. It's not needed. You don't need to capture all of this. Just focus on this, right? Between here and open. High of day during London, low of day during London close. Eventually we do continue into 12 o'clock after deep retracement. But I'm telling you, it's just a repeating over and over and over and over and over and over again. You just keep looking back and it's like, it's so clear. Here, what is this profile? New York open reversal. Did London do anything meaningful? Right? In this case, we have a drop down. Does it drop into discount? Probably. Inefficiency there. But then we continue into New York open. This is why draw on liquidity is extremely important. Here's a perfect example. If you're approaching the charts, in this case, and you're just using this as a profiling guide, what are we going to see this as? London high of day, New York is going to continue, right? But our draw on liquidity is bullish for this example. I'm just kind of taking a leg out there and putting it. But if our draw on liquidity in this case was bullish, and we see this, then New York will reverse, right? So I'm assuming we had 8:30 news on this day just based on the driver we got here. But now you expand. We have low-hanging fruit objective would be our London high. And then we have also previous day high over here. The relative equal highs that was ran out in the PM session. But I mean, look at what time was this high formed at 10 o'clock. So hypothetically, you could use the macro in here. We could skip back and probably find a decent entry in this. On the 1 minute. Macro entry would be in here, would be fine. You have this inefficiency here. You have 953s dropping in all in here. You could use anything in this bullish order block before 10 o'clock, right? 930 drops, probably some SMT there too. Expands up, bullish order block. You have this also bullish order block, this wick. You have this inefficiency with the bullish order block there during macro time. Great entry. This inversion gap, that could be an entry, and then we run it. What time do we form this at? 10:06. Does this high need to be formed? Does this high need to be ran out again? No. So we would be done for the day. 10:06. So from entry from order block and for value gap up to here to the London high, 54 points. Perfectly fine. Right? And if you can just find one of these per week, you're good. So I'll leave the rest up to you. And if you want to go back and watch it, like I said multiple times, please do. It's important to understand this. I'll leave this picture in the description, I think. Or actually, I don't know if I can post pictures in the description. So what we'll do is this will be in the Discord. If you want to join the Discord, either the private group or the public, it'll be available to everyone for free. This is from Market Maker Turbo's videos, so I'll link his video especially in the Discord in the description below. And then the stuff that I've added was the price and the SMT and things like that and the key times. If you want to see it applied live every day, please come join the private group. You won't be disappointed. We live stream about 3 to 4 times per week, and you'll see this executed live, demo positions, as well as weekly reviews and lectures. And I hope this was insightful for you. I hope that this is a missing piece in time, understanding the daily profile and the session profile for New York. And it can kind of fill some of the gaps in your understanding of time and just using a model that works for you. So if it was helpful in the least, please subscribe and leave a like if you enjoyed. And I will talk to you guys soon. Peace.